Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very, very multifaceted individual speaking to us today from Auckland, New Zealand, Vonetta Taylor. Vonetta, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Vonetta is, thank you. Vonetta is a mentor, a teacher, a guide, and a founder. So, Vonetta, before we talk about the work that you're doing, can you tell me a little bit more about your journey from facing an existential interruption at 16 to becoming a mentor and guide for others seeking liberation?
Sure, I'd love to. It's quite a long journey, as you can imagine. But when I was 16 years old, I had a series of dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And in this dream, I was murdered.
Wow.
I was murdered the exact same way 7 times in a row.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the dream, where I approach one of the homes near my child park where I grew up, which is where this dream happened, there was a woman and I was begging for help to save me because I was dying. And I had been shot back 3 times. And the woman told me, "I'm sorry, I can't help you because God won't let me." So it was shocking for me to have this dream one time, but then for it to repeat every single night with the exact same details 7 days in a row. At the end of 7 days, I decided to become an atheist. I chose to no longer believe in the God that I was raised up with, the God that I was taught. If this God couldn't help me when I needed help the most, and I just knew something about it wasn't true for me. And so that kind of set me off on this path of self-realization. And this path guided me in many ways. I began just understanding other religion, other cultures, because I wanted to understand how other people around the world understood and related to God. And it wasn't until I was in Africa that I began just asking in the quiet of my own heart, "God, if you're real, reveal yourself to me. Reveal yourself to me." And then from that questioning, I just saw myself being guided and led on this really beautiful spiritual path. I found a really incredible spiritual mentor, someone who I feel was an enlightened master of the planet at a young age, after I just started meditating in my mid to late 20s. And then I found another spiritual mentor to guide me on my path. And I was just on my own path, just doing my own practices, seeking truth myself. And people around me began asking me for counseling. And that's how it started. I was called to it. And the more I helped people, the more I recognized that I had a gift to help and support people on their path of liberation.
Wow, what a fantastic story. Thank you for sharing it. And, when I was reading about you, you also say that your guiding principle is be free. Tell me how this has become central to your work and your life.
That's also a really great question. So when I was pregnant with my son, I had a miscarriage. And I was young. I was a young woman. So it was an unexpected pregnancy. And when I had this miscarriage, I was so surprised that I felt this immense grief, this immense sadness. I mean, I couldn't stop crying for 3 days. And I would have thought the opposite, given that I was definitely concerned about having a baby so young in my life without having started a career, which is something that I absolutely want to have. But instead, I was completely torn by the bond that had already been created inside of my womb between me and my unborn child. My son's father took me to the doctor before our next visit because he was just so concerned with me. And when I was on the table, just completely so heartbroken. But the doctor was rubbing the ultrasound around my belly and said, "Vonetta, there's a heartbeat." And I was carrying twins, and it's almost like a 1 in a million chance that one twin will abort while the other twin
Wow.
stays alive. And so I saw him as like a miracle child, after that.
Mm,
And when my son was born, like there were also these little signs that there was something really special about him. From the
mm,
day he was born, and his crib was close to a window, 12 birds would come and sit on his windowsill and just chirp and sing like in the cartoons. And I'm like, wow, I've
mhm,
never seen this in my life. Something
mm,
special with this kid.
mm,
Anyways, I was in the bathtub and I'm holding him to my chest, and I was starting to get a cold. And I talked to him all the time. I talked to him in the womb. I talked to him when I held him. And I just said, Mars, mommy has a cold. What should mommy do? And this 5-month-old told me to be free,
mhm,
which is, unheard of. First of all, five
mm,
months old don't talk.
mm, mm.
And his very first words on planet Earth were "be free" to
Wow.
me.
Mm,
And I almost dropped him. I thought he was like the Buddha child or something.
mhm,
But it really has sat with me, that I think any parent knows that our children are some of our greatest teachers.
yeah,
And those were his very first words that he ever spoke in his life at 5 months old. So it
amazing.
was so significant that I decided to allow this to be one of my guiding principles.
Mm,
And then through my spiritual journey, I've done a lot of different modalities and types of processes to understand myself and my
mhm,
purpose in the world. And one of those is archetypal work. And I discovered that, part of my archetypal composition is that I'm a liberator.
mhm,
And once I put those two together and then realized that my son told me to be free, as I've just developed my own sacred work, I've just realized this is what I'm here to support others in, being
wow.
free.
What an amazing story. Thank you again. And, you know, uh, this is something I've never heard of, 5 months old to be able to say, be free. Fantastic. So, Vonetta, based on all the work that you do with so many different people, what are some of the common barriers people face in their journey towards liberation, and how do you help them?
That's such a good question. Liberation is so multifaceted, and there's political liberation, social
Yeah.
liberation, economic liberation. But speaking to more personal freedom, which is where my work focuses on supporting individuals and communities into personal and collective liberation.
Mm,
I would say that some of the common barriers are societal norms.
mm,
So, like cultural and societal norms, family pressures, that a lot of people have been raised with this conditioning that it almost feels like they're crazy to
mm,
step outside of those conditioned beliefs, to think differently and
mhm,
to choose something different for themselves. I remember early in my spiritual path when I um, found a spiritual teacher, my parents instantly thought I was in a cult.
mhm,
When I chose to follow veganism, I was ostracized from my family. So it can be really challenging. They're
mm,
not like that now. They fully accept me and
mm,
all my wild and out there ideas, which aren't
mm.
so out there. I'm basically seeking truth and health and
Yeah,
love and
yeah.
happiness. But within some families, that can be very challenging. And
Mm,
so breaking those norms to find one's own belief systems
mm,
and to follow a path that is true for yourself can be a huge barrier.
mm,
And then some of the other barriers are, the mental and emotional obstacles that most of us face, like
mm,
our fears, our self doubts,
mm,
the traumas that we experienced in our lives that keep us rotating in patterns that don't allow us to break free, physical ailments that we're suffering from. And so all of these things can get in the way of our personal freedom. And how I help people is I help them through this journey of self discovery, this journey where they can understand for themselves first how to access and unlock
mm,
their own intuitive knowing so that they can begin to find the right pathways in health,
mm.
because health can be a pathway for one person's health can look completely different for another
Yeah.
person. um, and I help people to really recognize and face the fears that they have, to unlock and unblock the emotional stuckness that they may have, or pain or suffering, and to move through their layers of trauma so that they can really begin to empower themselves into personal freedom.
What a great response. Thank you. My next question, Vonetta, is what role does self-discovery play in achieving true freedom, health, harmony, and abundance?
Well, I feel like it's everything. I feel that self-discovery is the key, essentially. Just like I was sharing that, the process of self-discovery is to understand what you stand for, what you believe in, what are your values, what do you desire most, what makes your heart sing, what makes you feel the most alive, what lights you up. So that whole process of understanding oneself is so important to your journey in health, to your journey of fulfillment, to really know not what society says how you should live, but how you should live that actually
Right.
makes you feel most whole and alive and purposeful and happy. And I think it's absolutely key to all of those things.
Fascinating. And how do you balance the spiritual and practical aspects of your work to help individuals lead happy and prosperous lives?
So, I feel like when I'm in my work with people, when I'm leading retreats or I'm guiding my mastermind group or working one-on-one with clients, that is my spiritual work. We open up a very beautiful conscious field, a sacred field. Some may call it the quantum field, to receive information, to allow healing to happen. And all of that is spiritual. And then the practical aspects of it are, me scheduling everyone, emailing everyone, preparing myself for those experiences, packing my bags, like all of that is practical. And, a lot of people used to question and say, how do you do this? How do you travel the world and connect with so many different communities and share this work in this way without feeling so tired? The things that used to make me the most tired were packing and traveling. So those practical aspects I balance through meditation. I balance it through really spending a lot of time in nature. And because I'm an introvert, I need a lot of quiet time for myself to recharge and recuperate. So I'm very conscious of making sure that I have space and time to do the work that I need to do, to prepare beforehand, to have spaciousness after, to make sure that I have a lot of time for the things that bring me joy and that I have fun doing. And so I use the exact same tools that I teach. I chant, I meditate, I create a vision, a life vision for myself. I make an action plan, I follow it, all those things.
Amazing. And what role does nature and environment play in your teachings?
Oh, I mean, everything. So I was raised by, my mother was 18 years old when she had me. And I think because of that, there was such a great blessing that she allowed me to go outside every single day. I pretty much played outside every day from the time I remember until I went to school at 5 years old. And then I continued to play after school, on the weekends. I was a teenager going to overnight Girl Scout camp, canoeing and horseback riding and camping. And so nature, I feel, was one of my first teachers. And I've always gone to nature for support and have always felt very safe in nature. And then I remember kind of early on in my spiritual awakening, after 9/11, I was pretty much shocked to my core because it was a moment that I felt completely unsafe in our world.
Mm,
And I felt that I could be anywhere in the world that would be considered safe and
mm,
not be safe.
right.
And that's when I began deepening my relationship to Mother Earth. I began asking her, how do we stay safe? And her guidance has been stay connected to me, stay
Mm,
grounded to me. And as I've developed my spiritual work, grounding, connection to Mother Earth is one of the most fundamental principles and practices that I
mm,
share and
mm,
that I do for myself as well.
mm,
So it's critical. And then of course our environment is so important to our spiritual development. If you're in a space that feels really cluttered and unorganized, it's
mm,
hard to even have a clear mind, never mind quiet the mind enough
mm,
to hear the inner whispers
mm.
of your innate self.
Very interesting. And Vonetta, what are some key principles or philosophies that you consider fundamental to living a fulfilling life?
That's such a good question. I would say, first of all, be kind.
Hmm.
Kindness. Be kind to yourself
Mm,
in your self-talk and how you treat yourself. Be kind to the ones closest to you. You
mm,
know, the people that I work with, we often find that we tend to project most of our anger and frustration on the ones closest to us, and those are the ones that we love. And so we actually want to do the opposite. We want to pour
mm,
our love into those. So I would say kindness is fundamental. Having an open heart
mm,
is fundamental. Living curiously is fundamental. My values are freedom, love, unity, connection. I feel like these are all fundamental to living a fulfilling life and to
mm,
really be connected to your sole purpose and service in the
mm,
world.
mm. Fascinating. And you just mentioned a few minutes ago that you travel the world and speak to so many people all over the world. My question is, how do you adapt your teachings and your methods to resonate with individuals from diverse backgrounds and cultures?
Yeah, that's always an important part of, I think, anyone's work today in our global society is to really be respectful and honoring of
Mm,
differences amongst people. How I approach it is through non-judgment.
mm,
So part of my spiritual growth, my personal work in spirituality and my personal growth was to really live a life of non-judgment,
mm,
to not judge others, to not judge myself. But then I also meet people with an open heart.
mm,
And the heart is universal. So the heart, there is no barrier, there is no I would say difference in all of our, we all share a universal heart, no matter where we come from, what our backgrounds are on the planet. And then my other practice is to just meet people where they are,
mhm,
to meet them exactly where they are and to deeply listen for what's going on with them. And then to also just be respectful in my language and conscious in the way I share information.
mm. Fascinating. So, time for two more questions. My next question is, can you share any insights or lessons that you've gained working from infants and children that have relevance for adults seeking liberation?
Um, well, professionally, I don't work with infants
Okay.
and children. There's I created a service for some of my communities called Little
Mhm,
Mystery School, where I offered kind of like a meditation, a very small meditation
mm,
workshop for some of the
mm,
children in our communities. And working with them, what I learned is that their curiosity and excitement and love for play and fun really gave them an edge over
mhm,
adults. So,
mm,
for example, I taught the children a spiritual chant that
mhm,
helps to ground you in your body. It connects your chakras. It opens up and activates your voice. It kind of puts you in a devotional, calm state. And the parents reported that after that one session that their children attended, that they would catch them cleaning their room, chanting the chant. Whereas I've worked with adults who are going through many more challenges, have a lot more stress, and have shared the same teaching, and the adults won't practice it. So I just think children are more open,
Absolutely. I
and
agree with that. I
and
agree
that
with you.
that playful curiosity is something that we can all learn to awaken in our own inner child.
Well said. And my last question to you, Vonetta, what advice would you give to someone who is looking to unlock their intuitive channel and align with their authentic path?
Great question. So everyone has an intuitive channel, and really it's just a question of how much access do you have to your intuitive channel. And I would say the beginning steps of that is to be very present, to become more self-aware, to slow down, and really you want to begin to quiet out the outer noise to connect to the inner self. And so that would mean taking on a meditation practice. Meditation allows us to slow down, to quiet the mind. Meditation doesn't have to be sitting in an upward posture. You can go for a walking meditation. You can have a dancing meditation. But really, it's about quieting the outer world to get more in touch with the inner world. And then having just more, noticing more of your sensations. Noticing, oh, wow, that felt interesting. That energy felt different. Oh, what? And then start to like gently question yourself. What was that about? I'm curious about that. Get really curious about these subtle nuances of sensation and thoughts that you have that are different than your average, like what's happening normally inside the brain. And then you really want to trust yourself, because I work with a lot of clients who come to me and they already have their intuitive channel open, but they just don't trust it. And people can have many different gifts. So you can be clairaudient and hear things. You can be clairvoyant and see things. You can be clairsentient and feel things, or claircognizant and just know things. And you're trying to see something, but really your gift is through feeling. And so you want to go slow and really begin to just tap into like where's my strongest gift here, and then develop that. And how you develop it is just trusting when you hear some guidance, you follow it. And that begins to invite more and more of that into your life.
Fascinating. And on that note, Vonetta, and your amazing principles for leading a fulfilling life, which were be kind, have an open heart, be curious, and you said it's also based on freedom, love, unity, and connection. Thank you so much for speaking to me about your own amazing journey. Thank you for speaking to me, both the examples you gave me about the 7 nights of your dream and when your son told you to be free. They're such amazing stories. Thank you for sharing these. Thank you also for talking to me about so many different aspects of the amazing work that you're doing, supporting others. Thank you again, and good luck to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.